Tell us everything you learned when you met George R. R. Martin. I don't know. I've told the story of meeting George R. R. Martin a few times. I met him at Balticon. There was a dinner that you could join, and so I and some others paid to be at this dinner. And George went from table to table talking to people, and it was very clear that evening he didn't really want to talk about Ice and Fire. He kind of like sat down at all these tables and had like prepared stories that he was going to like tell about. He had a story where he was talking about the translation of Direwolf in French not really like working out, and it was very clear that like everyone at the table did not want to talk about that and like wanted to ask him questions, and like so like people interrupted him from his like story about the fucking Direwolf translation from French, and like because they wanted to talk to him about the questions they had. And so I had this Italian guy at my table that asked about Lady Stoneheart and if Lady Stoneheart was going to be in the show, and he said no, that Lady Stoneheart wasn't going to be in the show. And then one guy just thanked him. He was just like, I don't have anything to ask you. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done. The woman next to me asked him if the others were only evil or if there was more to them. And he said, keep reading. And I asked him, I've asked him a question about a song for Leah about like whether the Grishka was using a Silor, and he told me he didn't remember. And I asked him a question about if he was inspired by Plato's Republic because of like the purple eyes that appear in Plato's Republic. And he said that he read Plato's Republic in college, but he had no memory of it. And I asked him if the Brave Companions were going to appear again. And he said, yes, the Brave Companions were going to appear again. But most of them are dead, he said. And I was like, yeah, but like Urswick the Faithful. And he's like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then, but let's see what else. He talked to the Italian about pizza. He wanted to talk to the Italian guy about pizza. And because he was from Chicago and went to Northwestern, I brought up Chicago style pizza. And he like said he thought a Chicago style pizza was an abomination. Even though I fucking love Chicago style pizza, but that's
Chicago style pizza is not pizza, brother. I'm sorry.
You can argue that it's not pizza, but it's still incredible.
It's a casserole with tomato. Like it's stop. By the way, the one thing I always love about whenever you tell this story is the first time you told it to me, you told me how you were taken aback at how short he was.
He is really short.
To you, you're 6'6". Like everyone is short to you. The only person I've ever met in my entire life who's taller than you is my boy Bryson, and he's 6'7". He's taller than you by 1 inch. 1 inch. Yeah. And you're never gonna meet anyone you look up at. So come on.
It's fun. But he's a short guy. He's a short guy. And he was like really he needed to find a right chair. He has back problems, so he was like really concerned about like the chairs and like whether the chairs are going to provide him proper like back support.
So basically he wanted to talk about everything but Ice and Fire.
He wanted to talk about everything but Ice and Fire, right? Which is why I went in there with a plan to talk about Thousand Worlds, because I thought maybe he'd find that refreshing, and he did not. He was just like, I don't remember anything about that. That was a big fail on my part.
Did you pay to get in there?
He want to talk about Thousand Worlds. He did not want to talk about Thousand Worlds either. He wanted to talk about pizza. He wanted to talk about pizza with the Italian guy.
Did you pay to get in there?
Yeah.
What a waste of fucking money. I'm sorry, but it really, truly.
The story's been worth it, man. The story's been worth it.
I don't. Before you move on, I don't know if Glidus has told the story yet, but Glidus. I mean, George blogged about it, but Glidus and Alt Shift X met George R. R. Martin, and I think Glidus has said publicly that when he did meet George, they didn't get any Ice and Fire information, but they did get the information on the best place to get chicken burritos in Santa Fe. So if anyone's ever in the area, I ask Glidus for the best places to get burritos. So I don't want to make a fat joke, but man, that really tracks. He just wants to talk about food. That really tracks. Fuck.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But some of his like assistants and minions were about. They were so sweet and so nice.
Hmm.
But but that's about all. Everybody, and I don't know. Other people, I found out what other people asked him and stuff like that. One woman asked him about like if Gendry and Arya were going to meet again, and he's like, definitely. That's like an important plot point.
I guess Dave and Dan got that right then.
Yeah, he somebody asked about what specific medication for abortion like Lysa took, and that if it was this and this and this, and George is like, I don't know anything about like medication for abortions. I just like wrote moon tea as a thing. Like that's it.
That tracks though, because
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ancient Rome or ancient Greece, but there was a plant that women would eat, and it would pretty much be birth control, and they ate it to extinction. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I do. It's a tea. Totally. I saw a play about it, and I totally forgot what the name of it was, but I can look it up. But it's not exactly like 100% effective. Like, but nonetheless,
By the way,
um,
I'm
yeah.
reminded before you move on, I have to bring this up because I don't remember this. But shout out to Man Band who reminded me. He says, "Wait, didn't Preston make a comment at this dinner about wanting Avalon to come out instead of Winds, and everybody around him got annoyed?"
No, 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 no. I don't think anyone around me knew what I was talking about. I think
I
George
would.
got annoyed. Maybe George
You
got
think George
annoyed.
got annoyed at
I
that?
don't know. He seemed confused, and I was like, "That's a joke." So I said, I really love Thousand Worlds. I said, your some of your stories like a song for Leah and Meat House Man, like they're incredible, real punch in the gut, like. And I was like, and if you want to set aside Ice and Fire and finish Avalon, like, go for it. And he just kind of like just sits there, and I was like, that was a joke, and he still didn't react. But like no one around me would have understood what I was talking about. Like how many people know about Avalon? Like come on. Like no one was annoyed at me or anything like that. But George just kind of looked at me confused, and I said that was a joke, and he still just kind of looked at me confused. Oh, any ideas on who George will make the Winds of Winter prologue point of view? What do you think will happen? So what we know about the prologue in a factual sense is that um, George has said that Jane Westerling will be in the prologue of a feast of the Winds of Winter. That's the only clue that that George has given. Now, for a long time, there was a group think in the fandom that that meant that um, Forley Prester, who Forley Prester agreed to take and transport the hostages from River Run back to the crag. Um, that if that were the case, then like he might be the point of view. The problem with that theory, and way, and keep in mind that was like a big group think for a long time that he was going to be the POV. The problem with that is, and that the Brotherhood without banners would like maybe attack him, and that would be like the story. The problem with that is that like Jamie passes Jane Westerling to him, um, near the end of A Feast for Crows, and then he goes and he has his adventures at Pennytree, and then Jamie is missing for weeks in the epilogue of A Dance with Dragons for the first day of winter. So we're talking like several weeks, if not a month, has passed since Jane Westerling was passed off to Forley Prester. So he would have delivered her. Like that would have been done. Like so, um, for that reason, in the fanfic, I went and made the point of view a maester at the crag, and the theory for that was, well, if you look at the alternation of the prologues, that Game of Thrones prologue is north of the Wall, and A Storm of Swords prologue is north of the Wall, and A Dance with Dragons prologue is north of the Wall. And they're different people, Night's Watch, Wildling, but they're all north of the Wall. And so the idea is that odd number prologues are north of the Wall. And then your even number ones are Crescent, a Maester, and Pate, a Novice. And so the idea would be that even number ones are Maesters. So for the fanfic, we went with Maester at the Crag. Plus, just Maesters have so much information. They're great. They're great to have in an exposition sense. And which is why, like, Maester John is the point of view in the fanfic. But this is the information we have, is that Jane Westerling would be in it, and there is a very, very loose, maybe idea that Maesters alternate on even number books. You know, like, that's about it. And that the groupthink of the fandom for a while doesn't seem to hold any water, because, you know, it's just not in the right time period if you're talking about the prologue. But yeah, so I mean, the problem is that, like, again, if it's Jane Westerling and she's made it back to the Westerlands safely, it would be more about establishing all of this stuff that happened. Like, we have not touched the Westerlands since A Game of Thrones, since Robb attacked the Westerlands back in A Game of Thrones. Have we really been back there? And there's a lot of houses and a lot of history and a lot of connections between them and the Ironborn and all sorts of stuff that needs to be established. And so I think a prologue would spend a great deal of time establishing Westerlands lore, family relations, plot lines, and such, which is what we did with the fanfic. You know, we had House Case involved and what's going on with House Spicer and things like this. You know, but I think, like, you know, do I think George's prologue would look anything like with the fanfics? No, I don't think George's prologue would look anything like the fanfics, but I think it would probably be a Westerland house where a lot of story and background on the Westerlands is given, in order to, like, prepare for this much of the story to move there. But that's my guess. But we're basing this off of very little information.